The following is brought to you by Total Seal Piston Rings, the leader in ring seal technology. TotalSeal.com. Hello and welcome to another edition of Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal. I'm Joe Costello, WFO Joe. We have got another episode where we are diving into the world of horsepower with some of the greatest engine builders and thinkers in all of the automotive industry, one of which, who joins me each week as my co-host on the program, Mr. Keith Jones, the Director of Technical Sales for Total Seal. Keith, welcome back, another episode.
Well, it's good to hear from you, Joe, and glad to be here. It's always an exciting day and a great time when we get to do these shows.
So true. In fact, one of our last episodes, for those who didn't hear, it was a frequently asked questions type episode where, Keith, you recall, we kind of just went down the list of questions that people may have, and I actually received a fair amount of positive feedback, like people saying things about the episode. As much as we love our rock star guests coming on, people learned a lot for that last episode, so kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. There's a lot of accumulated knowledge in this industry and all the automotive racing, and it's a matter, like we've said so many times, of sharing that information and getting it out there, especially to the young and up and coming guys that don't necessarily have the resources that we had when we were young to be able to go just ask that question. Now they've got to go out, search it, find it, and we want to get that information out there and make it readily available.
The technology is so different. In fact, I got one on my Instagram account that I'm going to just share with you and the audience out there, because we did end the frequently asked questions episode with the the solicitation, like if you've got a question, you can send it to us and we'll answer it on the show, right? If you're doing that, we encourage you to call Keith right away, but we got one. So anyway, super stock racer who runs a Volkswagen, Doug Colley, reached out to me and said flat out, next time you and Keith are discussing Piston Rings 101 for the guys who have just enough knowledge to be dangerous and insist on assembling their own engines, a.k.a. me, ask about, what about inspection? And he lists a whole bunch of questions. Bottom line, I will forward those to you. And he says he learned more than he ever could have expected out of that one episode. So good job, Keith, and thank you, Doug, for listening to Hidden Horsepower.
And thank you as well, Doug. And thank you, Joe, for giving me the format to do it.
Yes, well, and in reverse, you're giving me the format to give you the format. And on this particular episode, we're very excited because we are drag racers, Keith, but we also love and appreciate all forms of motorsports. The Don Ott episode, great stuff, sprint cars. But now we get to go into the heart of NASCAR country, talking about Concord, North Carolina, with automotive specialist Keith Dorton. Keith has got a long and storied career, starting off in 1965. The stat that sells it all to me, and Keith Jones, I want your opinion before we bring Keith Dorton on. His first customer, the first guy to pay him to do something, Ralph Earnhardt.
There you go. Says it all. Keith's one of the guys, and I want to paint, just kind of a picture for people out there that may not be familiar with Keith. This is the guy that the Earnhardts, that the people came to when they wanted to find more. They know there's more there. There's a lot of guys out there that they're great engine builders, are accomplished, but Keith's one of these guys that he finds the things that nobody else thinks about. Once you hear it, you go, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Well, someone had to think about it first, and Keith's one of those guys. He's one of those guys that saw things and understood things that the average guy like me didn't necessarily recognize till he pointed it out.
All right.
And that's, he's a real thinker.
Let's get to it. From automotive specialists, racing engines in Concord, North Carolina, Mr. Keith Dorton. Keith, welcome to Hidden Horsepower. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very flattered by your comments there, Keith. Appreciate that. And the feeling's mutual. You guys have helped us a ton over the years.
Well, thank you. We're glad to be a part of it. Always glad and proud, I should say, more than glad, proud to be a part of, a person's success like yours and their race winning history. It's out. We appreciate it very much.
Joe kind of dated me there, talking about when we started. But I started really young, Joe.
Well, let's talk about it. You've been doing it for a long time. First of all, it's like, see, the way I look at it, maybe it's unique because I'm in the middle, right? I'm 47. I just turned 47, guys, just so you know. I don't mind. But I've got so much experience being able to speak with people like yourself, Keith. And then I see coming up behind me a whole new generation of engine builders. And yeah, they're doing it differently because they have technology, which you did not have. You had to do it in a different way, and you had to kind of create new concepts and ideas and build the machines that helped you build the horsepower. But I'm in a unique position to kind of see both of those generations. But how old were you when you started, Keith? And how did you become interested in this? Like, what was the spark that lit the fire that made you want to pursue this for a lifetime?
Well, I kind of thought that I was born on the wrong coast, when I was a teenager or even before teen years, and that I really envied things going on in Southern California because I was a drag racer to start with. And but I got involved and read drag news and hot rod and tinkered with lawnmower engines and built go-karts and actually built my first car, which was a 32 5-window with a flathead. Started on it when I was 15 and started driving it when I was 16. So got an early start, and we actually started the business. What was I? 20 years old, I guess, when we started the business in 65. But yeah, going back and thinking about things, piston rings are something that has really gone through a tremendous involvement. Nobody could perceive what we're doing now or what Total Seal is doing on piston rings. But, and I got a couple of examples of stuff that we did is pretty crude back in the day, but, where do you want to start, Joe?
Well, that's, let's talk with Keith Jones. I am just in awe of the things that you've seen in the racing community. And I know we want to get into some of the technology-centric conversation, and that's where the Director of Technical Sales from Total Seal, Keith Jones, will dive in. But I just I want everybody to understand that you started out your business initially doing some stuff with Holman Moody, right? Like the era of NASCAR that you worked into initially is the era that we now look at as the golden era, right? Like you were in and around guys like Smokey Yunick. Like that to me is ultimate in credibility, especially where we are now. I just want to give you a little bit of love for the life you've led to this point, and then we'll begin our information extraction.
Well, and again, I appreciate that. And that I got my start at Holman and Moody, and really my first full job and my only other full job, my entire career. That I worked there in 64, all of 64, and a little bit of 63, all of 64, and early 65 before I started the business, and worked with some really smart people. Weren't engineers, I did get to rub elbows with some of the engineers from Ford then, but the guys were just hard workers and innovators there, and taught me to work with my hands and my brain, so I wouldn't take nothing for that experience.
Tell me about Ralph Earnhardt being your first paying customer. Is that true? Listen, I'll tell everybody. I use the internet for my research, right? Like I come up with a couple of nuggets. Is that true?
Well, yeah, it was. The first piece of equipment that I bought was a balancing machine, and the closest balancing machine to here was about 80 miles up the road, and Ralph would take his engines or assemblies up there to get them balanced. And so when he found out that I'd started the business, and he come down and told me he would, he'd like for me to balance these engines, and he knew that I'd had experience from working over at Holman and Moody. So we got to be really good friends, and balanced a lot of assemblies for him. But he told me, he said, "Look, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You just need to work by yourself And, you don't need any more equipment. You got everything you need. And all you need to do is balance assemblies. And you'll be good at it. You make a good living, and you won't have all the headaches and so forth. But I didn't take that advice at all. As soon as we made, a few dollars, we bought a piece of equipment and more inventory and so forth, and then added employees and went from there. Now, should I listen to him? I don't know. I've made a lot of friends and got a lot of knowledge by accident, most of it through the years. So, and I think if he was still here, he would have a little respect for me for not taking his advice. But
yeah,
but
well,
no, he was a great guy. He was a real racer. He was an innovator, and he did everything himself. He built the cars, built the chassis, painted the cars, and built the engines. And, when Dale come along, Dale was a few years younger than I was, but we really hit it off. And that's one thing that I'm very proud of. We did engines for Dale. And then Dale Jr., when he started running late model stocks and running the bull rings. So really feel attached to that family. And actually, Dale's brother, Randy, worked with me for many years. And so we just had a close bond.
For the fans out here who are just listening to hear, stories from icons in NASCAR, like to hear all those names connected and think about the era, it must be special. Let's bring in Keith Jones. Keith, this is a great opportunity for you in that you get to work with Keith on engines and kind of see the behind-the-scenes creativity, like where it comes from. That's the reason he didn't just balance engines, because there was all kinds of creativity in there that needed to come out in various ways. Give me some examples of how you guys have worked together over the years.
Well, we've worked on, it's funny, because so much, including myself, years and years and years, decades have been spent, building performance engines. I mean, I'll say a millennia of people trying to make it faster, make it better. I was just at an exhibit at the Phoenix Art Museum called The Art of the Race Car, 22 iconic race cars from Indy cars to Formula One stuff. If it gets, I'll just say this, for anybody that sees that exhibit, it comes to your town, check it out, because it is uber cool. With the Ford v Ferrari movie that's out right now, the actual 68, 69 GT40, chassis 1075 that won both races is in that display. Just unbelievable stuff. But anyways, all of these are race cars, and they go back 100 years. And you're looking at all these things that we're trying to do to them and make them better, always trying to be innovative. And one of the things that's, until recent decades, and I'll say we're kind of ones that helped kind of push it forward, was, the ring was always just kind of overlooked. It was just, it was that other thing. You did all the work to the heads, you did all the work to the manifold, you did all the work to the carb, you did everything you needed to do to the block, you did all this preparation, then you just stuck a set of rings in it because they fit. And working with Keith, trying to reduce tensions and make things lighter and improve ring seal all the way around, whether it be bore finish or coatings on the rings. Working with him is a part of the development of this part, and to keep pushing it further and further and further, and where it's going to end, who knows. The neat thing about working with guys like Keith, today's technology, so much is created, tested, and dynoed on a television screen. We do everything in a modeling program. We do all, we research it, and that's great, but I grew up and Keith grew up, in an era where, I'll call it, I hate saying it this way because some people may take it the wrong way, but I call it good old boy mentality, where we just tried it. And we're not going to sit there and think about it for 5 years and go, I wonder if that works. A guy like Keith, you build a new camshaft, you stick it in and run it. If that didn't work right, well, you build another one, you make a change. We test and test and test and try and try and try. And there's groups of, people out there that don't do that. Like I said, we model it to death until we've done the one, and then that's it. But, thank goodness for guys like Keith and so many others out there that, were willing to take their knowledge, build the part, put the part on, try it. If that part didn't work, you learned from that, and then you built the next one and just kept trying it and evolving it. I remember being at an AETC conference a few years ago, and Keith had I can't remember if it was a video or just pictures, but they had built a clear oil pan so they could look at the roping effect in the bottom end of how the crankshaft will literally wick oil up out of it and wrap it around the crank and look, it literally looks like a lasso around the crankshaft. That's one of those things that, it's an aha moment when you see that. And I'm not sure exactly when he did that, but, what a startling thing. And, the realization of seeing this going on and what a destructive force that is in the bottom end. And again, tipping my hat to him on that.
Well, that was, very informative. And, I shared this with someone not too long ago. I've never won a race with theory. You got to have a theory to start with, but the only way we've been successful is to not put it on paper, but put it on the dyno. Actually physically make it and run it and then go to the racetrack. But boy, that's one thing that I was born a little early to take advantage of some of the technology that these young guys can do now. They can sit down in front of the computer and simulate a lot of these things and really be ahead of the game. But here I'm taking a hammer and a chisel and a welder and chiseling it out to see if it really works. And, as you well know, quite often it doesn't. But you don't forget
more times than not, but you learn from it.
Right. Here we just finished the race in Florida, and I remember one of my first things when I felt like I really started expanding my knowledge on piston rings was when we were first doing the restrictor plate engines with the small blocks in the mid to late 80s. All we had for piston rings then, was just a regular old 1/16th, molly top, and ductile second, and 3 millimeter oil. And we took these, or NASCAR took these 600 horsepower engines and restricted them down 200 plus horsepower. So you fought for every ounce you could. And I took an engine that we were making around 400 horsepower on the dyno, and pretty much everything conventional. We weren't pulling vacuum then. We didn't have any exotic oil pumps, but all I did was baseline the engine, run it, made sure everything was dialed in. All I did was just on the dyno, took the heads, took the pan off, took the pistons out, took the second ring off, put it right back together, and ran it. And not a scientific test, but it was scientific to me, and the fact that I knew all my variables were the same. And it was a good test, a good A and B test. And we picked up a solid 5 horsepower on a 395 or 400 horsepower engine. I thought, wow, that really set my mind to thinking about friction. And who had ever thought, Keith? I know you certainly thought of it before I did, but who would ever thought just a few short years ago that we'd be running a compression ring that was around a 20 thousandths width with those 73 radial. I mean,
yep.
There's no friction to speak of there. But that I've really thought about that a lot. I mean, just from that experience 30 some years ago to just reducing the friction by taking off one ring. Now you had to be careful about these things then about oil consumption in a 500-mile race. But actually, the first time we did that, we actually won the race down there. So it did turn out. Where are you going from there, Keith? You have any idea?
That's a darn good question. Because if you'd asked me 10 years ago that we would be at the size ring that we are today, I'd have said, I don't know about that. But anything and everything, new materials keep presenting themselves, and new coating technologies keep presenting themselves, and we've been talking the other day about matrixed materials, and trying to take this turn rocket science into automotive science, And that's that's where it's going to go. So where it ends up, I don't honestly know, but it'll be thinner and lighter.
I guarantee you. It's amazing. That friction thing, I kind of call it free horsepower. We don't have to increase airflow or compression or add power adders. You reduce friction and it doesn't cost you anything. So.
You're 100% correct. Yeah.
I love the fact that Mr. Dorton is using the opportunity to get a little something out of Mr. Jones and do that, Keith. I love the idea. We got him on the spot also as far as where this is going, and thinner and lighter, less friction. That makes a lot of sense, but the how you accomplish that. Like we just learned in the drag racing world a couple of weeks ago that the block hone on one of the Pro Stock engines fundamentally changed the performance of the car. Kenny Delco was out there saying like all we did was hone the engine, and all of a sudden they're making 25 more horsepower. So there is a lot to be said in that area. Is there something that you tried, Keith Dorton, that didn't work, that you went down the road and said, oh, this is not the road to go down, we need to try something else?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Concerning, the topic that we were talking about here today, though, we've tried all types of honing procedures and, heated the block and so forth. And, we actually, as far as cylinder finish, and it's a matter, you've got to treat every engine individually, and we're fortunate in one way that we do a big variety of engines and all different types of motorsports. So you have to keep that in mind. But we went through some of the weird honing techniques that were brought about in the 90s. Mostly in the 90s, where there was a real deep valleys and plateaus, and the crosshatch was all different, and into a mirror finish. And we kind of hit on what we were and settled on just a basic hone job. We have diamond hones, but and we use them on the high carbon blocks or the Nicosil liners. But basically, we finished with an 820 and then a few strokes with a C30 corks, and has worked for us. But where a lot of people go wrong, and I think Keith, you will agree with me, is the break-in. The new rings, they don't require a break-in. Like when I was growing up, you take the car out and you run it hard, and then you let off, and then you run it hard, and so forth, and cycled it temperature-wise and so forth a number of times to break in the rings. With the rings now and the way the blocks are prepared, it's pretty much spontaneous, and if it's done right. But we've had some guys just recently that have a run-in stand. Not a dyno, but a running stand, and then put a carburetor on there that's they're going to race and run the thing at 1,500 to 2,000 RPMs for 20 minutes to breaking it in, and you're just washing the cylinders down. And ports are black and wet sometimes, and why is it doing that? Well, you're washing all the oil off for one thing, but so that's a couple of things that we found that didn't work, and we found that you can definitely over-engineer yourself if you're not careful too.
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, I mentioned it when I think one of our previous ones that the run-in stand guys are going to hate me, and now they're going to hate the other Keith, because I agree with them 100%. I see more damage done to engines run on run-in stands. As Keith said, there's no load on the engine. They're fuel washing it to death. If it ever stood a chance of seating the rings up, well, that chance went out the window 20 minutes ago, because it's, as Keith said, you want to get it fired up, set the timing, lash the valves, and get it out there and run it. Sitting there with no load, pouring fuel through, it's killing it. And it's one of those things that I deal with every day. We work very hard to pre-lap our rings, and as Keith said, the stuff pretty much just, comes right in. If you've got a decent cylinder finish and you haven't put anything crazy in it for oil, and you get out there and do your thing, they're going to come in. It's a piston ring. I mean, if we do it right, you do it right, what's left to do? It's going to come in. But I had a gentleman this morning talking to, and he's asked me about break-in oils, and he's got it in his head that he's got to take this oil and then add all these extra break-in additives to it. And I'm like, sir, the people that, let the oil engineers engineer the oil. They've already put everything in it needs. It doesn't need your help. And he's been having all these problems, and I'm trying to convince him that it's all these extra concoctions that he's pouring in his oil. Just buy a good break-in oil and run it. That's all it needs. So, if we stay out of our own way, we generally don't have too many problems.
Well, that's true. Keith, I know you remember the micro welding issues when they first popped up, 20 years or more ago. And
yes, sir, I do.
The ring was, the ring was the first thing everybody pointed their fingers at. And that we started pulling vacuum, and we weren't spraying the cylinders. We were drying things up, and we were micro welding that top ring. And but the thing was, it pretty much didn't matter whose ring you were using; it would happen. But I found out purely by accident one time that, and we weren't having a lot of trouble micro welding, and at that time we were doing 90% of our business was the NASCAR on the cup level, and fairly successful at it. But we weren't having the micro welding trouble that a lot of them were. It was just very occasional that we'd have it. But we had worked with a particular piston company, and they had really worked on getting that top ring groove like it should be. And again, this was a wide groove, so compared to what we're using now. But we found out that one piston that most of the guys were having trouble with at that time, the piston, the top ring groove was machined with a slight angle up. So with the compression, it flattened the ring out against the cylinder. And they had a run of quite a big run where the top ring groove was actually angled down, very slightly. But, we ran a thousandths and a couple of tenths or maybe a thousandth and a half clearance on that top ring then. So that ring could basically flop around. So it was letting it lose that seal by going below horizontal, if you follow me. Do you remember any of that, Keith?
Oh yeah, now there was, like I say, the tilt in the ring grooves. Oh yeah, I remember very well.
Yeah, right. But along those lines, you guys and the piston people now that can machine that flimsy top ring, both machining the ring and the piston people being able to machine that groove, is just, I never thought we'd have that capabilities. But now with the hard anodized top groove and the quality of your rings, micro welding's a thing of the past. I mean, it's, I'm sure it still happens some, but even though as much vacuum as we pull in these things, it just amazes me how you can machine those things.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, like you said, Keith. It's I remember years ago when we first came out with the 0.8 millimeter rings, and the piston guys were cursing us because, man, we don't know how to machine that ring groove. The tool deflects so bad with that little teeny ring, and now, like he said, we're all the way down to 0.5 millimeters. So it's a challenge from both sides. Not only how to make the ring, but how to cut that land and cut a good one. Because you stated, micro welding is pretty much a thing of the past. It doesn't happen much anymore. It's if it does, you can usually find something that caused it. Timing was off, or fuel wasn't right, or whatever. It's usually something that's being done to the part, not by the part. But like you said, we definitely keep pushing each other's envelope to how to make these things. That's for sure.
Well, I was going to say the quality of what we're using for piston rings now. In the early days, that was a part of a rebuild. You may not have to put pistons in; you just put rings and bearings. Well, that's not true anymore. I mean, the quality of the rings, it's not uncommon. And again, we're an independent shop. We don't have anybody paying the bills. We got So we have to count our pennies, and we have to do everything very economically and efficiently. So it's not uncommon today for us to use a set of top rings from one block to another. Who would ever thought you could do that, years ago? It happens. It works. We've been doing it for a good while now. And if, there's a certain place you can go, and we look at things under, 50 power magnification, and you'll know when it's time to replace. But boy, it's a lot longer than it used to be.
And just to throw this out there, and I know my boss is probably not going to want me to say this because we're a piston ring company, but I actually just had some rings sent back in for inspection from a NASCAR team. These rings have 4,800 race miles on them. And are they done? They're close, but not done yet. They're not over. There's still a little life left in these guys, and like I say, and a lot of people don't realize how severe that environment is that these things run in these days, and it's crazy.
Wow, that is amazing.
Oh, I know. I know. Yeah.
Okay, Keith. So here's the question I was going to ask. In that,
go ahead.
Not falling into a routine with building engines, like this is working for me, this is working well, I'm going to keep doing it, right? Like you have to always be ahead of the next competition. Whoever's building an engine across town or across the world, they're trying to beat you or certainly offer a better product, so you have to innovate. And being able to do that on a consistent basis and that creativity that you have to think, I don't want to use a cliche, but outside the box, right? Come up with something new. How have you been able to do that so effectively over such a term?
Well, gosh, I don't know. I'll have somebody else tell me that you can't do that or it won't work, and that fits the wheels are turning. That happens more than it should, but we've always liked a challenge. And sometimes you get in a rut. You got to make money doing this too to survive. Sometimes we have to do things. I've made the comment before. I got to do certain things to be able to do what I want to do. It's just like when we first started, when I was telling you about Earnhardt, I had to do brake jobs and tune-ups so I could build engines too, because there wasn't enough of it to go around that way. But now it seems like we've always got some project that you really keeps the brain cells active, and you just want to step out of the boat. See if you're going to sink or walk on the water. And fortunately, we've been involved with land speed racing a good bit for the last decade, and there's no rules, so to speak, there. So it's been a dream for me to be able to get out of the world of the inspections where they're splitting hairs to basically no rules for land speed racing. And got a project going on now that I actually has woke me up at 2:00 in the morning a few times already. And you get to thinking it's hard to get back to sleep. You want to come to work. So I feel very fortunate that at my age that I still feel that way. When you can't wait to get to work in the morning, I don't know if that's right or not, but I feel very fortunate that that happens quite a bit with me.
Amazing. I notice experimental work, Department of Energy. Is that top secret stuff? Is that something you can share? Is that you can give us like a taste of what you're doing? I'm thinking about like what could the Department of Energy possibly want to experiment with engines for? Space stuff, military stuff. Is that something you're allowed to talk about?
Well, it is now, because that was part of the presentation at the ADC conference last year, or year before last, and that was we did a number of engines for them using a variable compression ratio theory, and so we were under non-disclosure, commitment for quite a while there, but it's pretty well common knowledge now. But that was I thought it was a joke to start with when somebody called me and asked me was I interested in doing that, and then when they flew down here from Washington, I realized it wasn't a joke. But that was actually, it was my first time having the luxury of being able to use some of the cylinder pressure measuring equipment and so forth back then. Now, it wasn't to make horsepower. It was because it was for efficiency. They were looking at making the engine more efficient, which in turn makes more power. But these were pretty unique pieces, and we did 5 gas engines to 1 diesel, for them. And now that technology has been used. Nissan has a variable compression ratio engine that's coming out now, I think this year, that's very similar to what we were doing. And started that project in 2000, and haven't done anything with them in about 4 or 5 years now. So, but gained a lot of knowledge there.
Interesting. Keith Jones, do you have any final questions for Mr. Dorton? Obviously, I think we could do this, like Keith Jones and I could do this all day long. I don't know about Mr. Dorton. We'll have to have you back if you are so inclined. But Keith, do you have any final questions for Mr. Dorton?
Well, there's actually a couple comments I'll make there. One, it is exciting to, we'll say, wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and have an idea, and it's so great that a guy like Keith that's been doing this, for a long time, you want to think that, hey, maybe he's run out of ideas, but he hasn't, because he's a thinker. He thinks outside of the box, and one thought leads to the next thought, then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off, and that's exciting for me, and exciting for the performance world that guys like him are still coming up with ideas and still doing these things. But a couple of weeks ago, I was at the MPMC conference, which is a media trade conference held in California, and I was sitting down with a gentleman that knows Keith, and he asked me to ask you about why you took up smoking the pipe, and it had something to do with restrictor plate engines and looking at the cloud.
Well, when you were talking about the window and the oil pans and looking at it, we hired a guy to do some high speed filming, on the dyno. So we put some windows and in the runners of the intake manifold, and the side of the plenum chamber and the side of a carburetor ventura, and use lights and done this high speed filming. But anyway, on the flow bench, I couldn't afford to keep this guy on. We made use of his time when we had him here, but I was trying to doing flow testing on cylinder heads and manifolds. I wanted to be able to see there, because I wasn't understanding it. We had a pitot tube we could stick in there and so forth. But so I said, well, I need smoke. And I never had smoke, but I thought, well, I tried to, it was too dangerous to light a piece of newspaper and hold it there. So I got a pipe and started smoking a pipe on the flow bench, and it works, and going on from there, you've probably done this too, Keith, or seen it done, take an oil can, squirt on the headers on the dyno and see where the smoke goes, how it goes into the induction system. It's amazing. I found out about boundary layers and, all kinds of crazy things that I never would have thought. But now that, I didn't like the smoke, I won't guess, but but it sure taught me a lot watching it.
Well, I very much appreciate you answering that, because that's kind of where I thought it was leading. And, again, these are the little secrets and the little things that, that guys that necessarily don't think like Keith may not ever come up with an idea. But here he is, he just shared that, and it's like, this is, how he's looking at, swirl effects in the carburetor and the intake manifold. He's using that smoke and seeing how it actually moves. And that's just another little piece of unlocking the mystery of what makes this thing make power.
Any final questions for Keith Jones from Total Seal as we get ready to part ways on this edition of Hidden Horsepower?
Well, no, I mean, I'm very honored that you guys asked me to be on here. I hope we contributed a little bit. And Keith, I'll continue to keep bugging you as long as you'll let me. You guys, it goes back to the days with Joe, with the Total Seal, and such a great company, and we've got a lot in common because we've been doing it, all our lives. So keep it up.
We appreciate it more than I could possibly tell you, and again, we've got to, like I say, God rest his soul. Here we tip our hat to Joe every day, and thank him for having the innovation, the idea to do what he did and what he started, and letting us carry on his legacy.
Keith, I always end off every episode with a question to our guests that hopefully is, advice to your younger selves, right? Like, there are engine builders out there, 20 years old, 16 years old, people that are interested, that are just starting out in their journey in this world, motorsports, maybe to get in and hopefully keep this sport that we love going for the next 50 years or so. Do you have any advice for that person that is out there trying to make their way, trying to figure this all out, this world of technology and engine building? And it is very challenging now with all the technology, et cetera. But do you have any advice you'd like to offer those folks?
Well, yeah, that's one thing that I've taken a big interest in over the years, in that, trying to help young people that are starting out. And as long as you treat every engine that you work on just like it's going to the Indianapolis 500 or Charlotte Motor Speedway or whatever, it may be going in your grandpa's Buick, but if you treat that thing with the same care as you would a race engine, I'm not talking about using a set of tool steel piston rings and things like that. I'm talking about the care of making sure all your tolerances are right and so forth, and treat it with that care. There's no telling how far you can go in the business. And, that's hard. That's hard to do because sometimes it's cost us money when racing, there's not a shop full of race engines and you've got to do some other engines to pay the bills. It's kind of hard to do that, but you got to, you've got to do it just like it was yours, and do the best you can. And there's no limit to how far you can go.
Well, thank you for that. Mr. Dorton, thank you for spending time with us on Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal. It has been a great career, and thank you so much for sharing some of your stories with us. Hopefully you'll come back in the future. I know this is going to be a very popular show with everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys, and y'all have a great evening.
You as well. Thanks, Keith.
Keith Dorton, how about that? Automotive specialist, Concord, North Carolina. And Keith Jones, I'm calling you guys by your last names, right? Because you're both Keith. But to me, you could just feel and sense the experience, and we barely scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah. We could go for hours. Keith's knowledge, and everybody hears this all the time. He's forgotten more than I know, and to just be around a guy like him and sit down and and have a beer and talk war stories. He'd tell you things about engines and people that should go into a book. He truly is a legend in this industry, and very honored to be able to speak with him.
Yes, amazing stuff. And just the beginning. Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal. Click subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, to hear more interviews like this one, plus frequently asked questions answered by Keith Jones. Keith, where can they send questions if they have questions of you? And the idea that at some point in the future we'll ask questions from listeners out there.
Well, they can. You can always call us at 800-874-2753. You can give us a ring, or you can email me. It's Keith. It's Keith, and then the letter J, Keith J @TotalSeal.com. I will answer your questions. And, if you need anything, please always feel to reach out to us. That's what we're here for.
An amazing episode. Keith Dorton, legendary, the NASCAR side of the world. I was happy to hear he started off as a drag racer, though.
Me too. There's a little drag racer in all of us. I think. It's. I think it's an important thing. We start off on the streets and then we eventually work our way to the track.
And I just want to mention, I know that there are a lot of people listening who know the name Dorton and have maybe questioned. Yes, Keith's brother, Randy, was at Hendrick Motorsports for many years. And if you have been aware of the family name, know that Randy was lost in the 2004 Hendrick Motorsports plane crash near Martinsville, Virginia. That's something that I'm sure has been sparking in the minds of people who are paying attention on the NASCAR side of the thing. So the Dorton family name has been very successful in the world of engine building on the NASCAR side of things and beyond. Just wanted to tie that all together for everyone. Keith Jones, thank you once again. I appreciate it. A great job on this edition of Hidden Horsepower.
Well, look forward to our next one, and it's always a great time. Thanks again, Joe. Appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal. More episodes in the archive, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Go back, listen. We got Jason Line. We got Stevie Fast, Matt Hartford. We got Pat Musey. We got Ben Strader. We got Don Ott. They are all up there, whether it be sprint cars, drag racing, stock cars. We are covering it all on Hidden Horsepower for you hardcore engine building types, or if you're new to the game, we're going to try our best to get you up to speed. That's going to do it. My name's Joe Costello, and we'll see you next time on Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal.